Hello, Catholic HV. This is Luigi here once again. It is Restore Week. We have Restored the Immaculate Part 2 coming up this Saturday. And we are featuring all of our presenters and speakers this week. We want to introduce you to them so that you can get to know them before you see them live and in person on Saturday at St. Joachim's in Beacon. We're blessed to have with us Father Louis Masi, who is the parochial vicar at St. Mary's in Fishkill. Father Louis, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for asking me to be with you. It's great to be here.
As we were speaking before, I had a great conversation with Father Matt Ryman. He's the pastor of Holy Name of Mary out in Montgomery, and some of your exploits back when you were in seminary and serving the different communities. We have Sister Bethany Madonna of the Sisters of Life coming up keynoting for us on Saturday. And while you and Father Matt were in seminary, you had the opportunity to help get their new convent up and running down in the Bronx, and you were you're carrying statues that were bigger than yourselves. You were chipping paint off of ceilings. Like, that must have been an experience, huh?
It was. The statues were really big, but that doesn't mean that I'm short.
So, for those, me and Father Louis both have very much Italian blood in us. But my mother's Irish, but you wouldn't think so because I'm at my mother's house right now. And if you can see behind me, this is the shrine that always adorns the houses of Italian mothers. But they also adorn the houses of Irish mothers too, Irish Catholic mothers. So I chose this song to introduce you because I love the soundtrack to The Last of the Mohicans. The orchestra music is fantastic. And on top of it, there's a song, and it's the fort battle. It's the battle at the fort that they have. I think it's Fort William Henry. And so as I listen to the song, like it always conjures up images of just defense and battle. And I thought about it because of the fact this Saturday, part of your talk, which we'll get into in a few minutes, is going to be based on the Church Fathers. And anytime we go to defense of the church and the faith and doctrine and heresy, we always return to the early Church Fathers. How many of them were disciples of the apostles or disciples of the apostles? And so we always return to them, especially when we go to battle in defense of the church. And, in talking to some of your fellow priests, including Father Matt last night, they always mentioned to me about you having a really strong love for the Church Fathers. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so when I was in first theology, I had a great introduction to the Church Fathers with a Jesuit priest. His name was Father Joseph Corolla, and he's one of the most inspiring priests I've ever met. And throughout that entire semester, he really inspired me to study the Church Fathers more deeply. I was particularly inspired by their preaching, their ability to evangelize, how they responded to the challenges that they were faced with. Because as you yourself said, in the early church, there were so many heresies that arose, and the Church Fathers had to respond to them, and they had to respond to them with clarity and conviction. And every single one of them did, so that we can understand who the person of Jesus is and who his mother is. And so I was always inspired, especially by their preaching, because that was the main way that they communicated the faith and that they taught the faith was by preaching. And so we can't hear their voices, but just through their writings, you can see how powerful and how filled with zeal they were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of them use very strong language. They don't beat around the bush. They don't use blunted edges. Like they hit you hard, and with truth. But it's received.
Yeah.
It is
They were not politically correct, and that's why many of them were sent into exile time and again and again and again.
One of my professors for my grad classes, Dr. Bergsma, used to be in a Calvinist seminary, and one of our early Church Fathers, St. Augustine, he's lauded and celebrated by the Calvinists. And part of the seminar, like they read so much about Augustine, and he's such a part of their theology. And as he was going through seminary, he was talking about how they loved Augustine so much. He was like, I should read more about Augustine. And so he dove into some of his other works, like City of God, on the Trinity, all that kind of stuff. And as he was reading through it, he's like, I think I should be Catholic.
Yeah.
And that's
what
happens
to a lot of people who read the Church Fathers.
Yeah, because they find out the truth, even when it comes to the Eucharist. As we approach the year of the Eucharist on January 1st, they all talk about the Eucharist as truly the body and blood of Christ,
Yes.
and how it lost its meaning over the centuries. But, when you go back to the first fathers, they really understood what it was. And when you go back to the church fathers, they truly understand who Mary was, who Mary is to Jesus, who Mary is to us, and it's so important for us to recognize, especially for our young adults, like, who is Mary to us? How does she factor into everything? And who is Mary to you? How has she impacted your journey, your discernment, where you ended up in life?
Yeah. Well, Mary has always been a guide for me. I have to say, though, that it really became very powerful, and she became very powerful for me, actually, my first year in the seminary. So I decided I was going to do the consecration to Jesus through Mary, according to St. Louis de Montfort. But I started doing it only because I kind of felt like I'm a seminarian, I'm going to be a priest. I have to do something like this, right? I wasn't yet filled with great zeal. But by the end of those 33 days of preparation, I realized that Mary was and had to be a central part of my life. And there was one almost miraculous thing that helped me to realize that. So I was trying to figure out where I was going to do the consecration itself. And since St. Louis de Montfort speaks so much about baptism, I said, let me go to the place where I was actually baptized, to the font of my baptism. And there's a statue of the Blessed Mother there. And so I made the consecration at the font where I was baptized. And then a few months later, for some reason or another, I had to look at my baptismal certificate. And I never really knew the day of my baptism, but I looked at my baptismal certificate and I saw the date, and I looked up the date in the church calendar, and I was actually baptized on the feast day of St. Louis de Montfort. And so I was baptized on the feast day of my patron saint. I never knew that. My parents didn't realize that. I don't think the priest who baptized me realized that, because no one ever said anything about it. But I realized that St. Louis, my patron saint, and Mary had really guided me this entire time without my ever realizing it. And so it became powerful for me, because I realized that even when I don't necessarily feel their presence, when I don't feel the presence of Mary, I know that she's there with me, and that she's guiding me, and she's leading me where I need to be. And so it clicked at that moment. And thanks be to God for that consecration, because it really changed my whole outlook for the rest of my life now.
That's awesome. It reminds me of, so like I have 3 kids, 1 on the way. And my oldest son, Remy, he's named after a non-canonical archangel. His name means thunder of God, but we consecrated him to the Blessed Mother. And then my daughter, Ella, she's named after, her first name is Gabriella. She's named after Gabriel, the archangel. And she's consecrated to Saint Joseph. And then comes my third child, my daughter, Elizabeth. And there's another backstory to why we called her Elizabeth. What it came down to is we ended up naming her after the mother of John the Baptist. And as fitting, we felt like, well, if we're going to name her after the mother of John the Baptist, let's just consecrate her to John the Baptist, which we thought was awesome. And so she was born in the beginning of May. And we finally, we're trying to figure out in terms of baptisms, because our church was going to close for renovations, for renew and rebuild. So we were trying to fit it in. So we finally were able to get the date set the week before, the Saturday before we got the date set. And then comes the weekend of the baptism. You know what weekend it was? Whoa. The Visitation.
Wow.
Mary and Joseph were both there with Jesus, and Elizabeth and John the Baptist.
And John the Baptist all together.
And we're like, all right, I guess we chose the right name. We chose the right patron.
Yes.
It was fantastic. But even so, like, Mary has been guiding everything we've been doing, because, even though Restore the Immaculate was supposed to be back in April, we split up into 3 days this fall, and the 3 different talks, the first one in September was was Mary, Daughter of the Father, focused on identity, happened on September 12th, which is the Feast of the Holy Name of Mary, which all has to deal with identity. This Saturday is Mary, Mother of the Son, which deals with vocation and call to holiness. And it's the Feast of the Presentation of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And then in December, we have Mary, Spouse of the Holy Spirit, and it's Our Lady of Guadalupe, December 12th.
Yeah.
So Mary's hand is above all and everything. And then it wasn't until right before the first one, we realized, wait a minute, we moved it to, what church are we having this at? St. Joachim. the mother of Mary. So like Mary's hand has been in so much of this. It's been fantastic. But it shows that Mary is a guide. Mary is there to help us and bring us along. She's there to journey with us, to encounter her son on the road to holiness. And this is kind of what you're going to be talking about this Saturday in your workshop, is the church fathers, their role and their knowledge and their love of Mary as the path to holiness. Can you tell us what we can expect from this weekend, and why our young adults should come to the conference?
Yeah, I mean, the church fathers realized that Mary played a very central role in salvation. She wasn't just a peripheral figure for the church fathers, right? In order to understand who Jesus was, they needed to know who Mary was. And in fact, in teaching about who Jesus was, the church fathers always pointed to Mary to show that Jesus was human, to show that Jesus was divine. And so Mary is clearly our path to Jesus, not only with St. Louis de Montfort, but really early on in the church, right? Starting from the very beginning, she shows us the way to Jesus. And she herself shows us the way because of her holiness, right? And so I think certainly the conference that I'm going to give it's perfect to talk about the church fathers when we're talking about Mary as the mother of the Son, because that is the main thing that they focus on. The church fathers for almost 700 years focus on Mary as mother of God and mother of Jesus Christ. And that's almost all that they talk about for 700 years. So it makes perfect sense, right? But she becomes our mother as well. And the church fathers make this very clear, that she has to be our mother as well. Not only because Jesus gave her to us at the foot of the cross, but for a lot of other reasons, some of which I'm going to mention at that conference. I don't think you need any other reason to come to the conference other than the fact that Sister Bethany Madonna is going to be speaking. Sisters of Life, forget about me, right? Sisters of Life are great. Everyone wants to hear them. So, and she's definitely going to give us a beautiful reflection on Mary as our path to holiness as well. Because just as the church fathers saw that Mary was necessary in order to understand who Jesus was, I think even in our day today, we need to know Mary if we're going to know Jesus. And we're going to need to grow close to Mary if we're actually going to be holy, which is what we're all called to. So come, please.
That's awesome. And we're so grateful that you want to be there. And it's fitting because as we approach, and obviously we'll send out more information about the year of the Eucharist, we're starting it on January 1st. And the main reason why we chose January 1st as the start date is because it is the feast of Mary, Mother of God. And when you look at the early church fathers, how many of them say that the body born of Mary is the same body that is the Eucharist? And that is the connection. And it's our continuation of saying that the way to Jesus, the way, through the Eucharist is through Mary. Like Mary is that conduit. If God the Father chose Mary to bring Jesus to us, it's the only thing that we go back to Jesus through Mary.
Yeah.
And so starting the year of the Eucharist on Mary, Mother of God, is our way of inviting Mary into the full year of the Eucharist with us. So we're very grateful for that. We're grateful for this Saturday because it's just a great lineup with you, Sister Bethany Madonna. We have Stephen Aguino, who's going to be our featured performer. And then we're welcoming back, obviously, Mike Corsini, who had painted the missionary image from St. Faustina's Diary, Mary, Mother of God of Priests. And believe me, if you haven't seen it yet, you're going to fall in love. So be there on Saturday. Go to www.restorecatholic.com and register. You can find out all the information, the timings. We check in and registers at 2:30. Conference starts at 3. Workshops at 4, dinner at 5, Catholic Underground at 7:30. So we hope that everyone can join us. Again, it's www.restorecatholic.com. Spread the word, capital W, and hopefully we will see you this weekend. Father Louis, thank you so much for being with us. We really do appreciate it. And on behalf of everyone here at Catholic HV, Catholic NYC, and all of our young adults, thank you for your priesthood. It is such a joy and a blessing, and we look forward to seeing you on Saturday.
Look forward to seeing you too. All right.
Everyone have a great day. God bless you.
God bless. Bye-bye.